When Xiamo arrived home, his shirt was stuck on his back. It was transparent, and the skin was visible. He put down the watermelon without saying a word. His face looked like the roofs along the railway. Xiamo was sitting by the bed and saw the note left in the morning. He took out a cigarette and held it. Xiamo's lighting was like playing a game with himself. First, he lit a paper with a lighter, then lit a match with the paper, and finally lit a cigarette with the match. The cigarette he smoked today was not homemade, but 555. There were 2 left in the hard box. After smoking, Xiamo raised his head, not looking anywhere, and said, "I bought you a melon." The smoke spread everywhere and became a silent dynamic. During this silence, little Sue stood on one side with 10 fingers crossed in one place, resting quietly on her abdomen. A train passed on the railway, and the carriage was full of coal. The reflection of the coal was bright and white in the September sun, sharp and dazzling. Little Sue squinted her eyes, and the high speed of the train stretched the reflection of the coal, making it passionate and chaotic. Early the next morning, little Sue woke up Xiamo. Xiamo opened his eyes very dry. Xiamo noticed that little Sue had dressed up carefully. Her hair was neatly combed behind her head, tied to a ponytail, and even the eyeshadow and lipstick were put on. Xiamo raised his upper body with elbows, squinted, and asked, What are you doing?" Little Sue was wearing a skirt and was stuffing the fake Fan brand jeans into her denim bag. Little Sue said, "Out? Where? Hospital? Why going to the hospital? What do you think?" "At least to check first," Xiamo said in a loud voice, lifting the towel quilt. "It's not the time yet." Little Sue glanced at Xiamo's trousers, and a low-value bill was erecting its rotten corner in his pocket. "Waiting is lasting," Little Sue said. "It's better to do it early." Xiamo lowered his head and said nothing, looking around for cigarettes with his eyes, only found a few filters on the ground. "I'll write a letter to my dad," Xiamo said. "Let him send some money for now." Little Sue sat next to Xiamo, took his hand to her abdomen, and said, "You are already a dad." Xiamo sent Little Sue to the entrance of the apple-colored corridor. The little nurse's chin was proud and majestic. She blocked Xiamo and motioned him to look at the note on the corner of the wall. The note was spat out from a printer, and 4 computer Weibei were printed. "Male guest stop." Weibei's lines are so hard, like the nurse's chin, that you can't bargain. Xiamo stopped. Little Sue's fingers slipped away from his palm one by one. There was a helpless look in Little Sue's eyes as she turned around. Xiamo saw her fear. As soon as Little Sue's figure disappeared, Xiamo took out a cigarette. As soon as he lit it, Xiamo took a big sip. Someone behind him patted him. "It's a middle-aged woman." The woman said, "Stop it. 2 yuan." Little Sue couldn't see the faces of the doctors and nurses. They're hidden deep behind the huge white masks. All the utensils and tools are made of stainless steel, shrouded in bright white light, emitting a scent of chemical liquids. Even the eyes of doctors and nurses are made of stainless steel, shrouded in bright white light, emitting the scent of chemical liquids. Little Sue's self-confidence floated on the water in front of the gynecologist, losing its original foundation and stability. She stood by the recliner a little at a loss, not daring to move rashly. Standing still is the only correct and feasible posture. She looked at the stainless steel utensils and tools, heard the hitting sound, which was clear and cold, full of rational spirit and aloof temperament. The work of a doctor is absolutely programmed. They know their own programs. They believe that the women here are also aware of their programs. The doctor looked at little Sue's waist and lifted her skirt with his eyes. Little Sue hesitated for a moment, and the doctor's eyes hardened. Little Sue did as the doctor ordered and sat down on the recliner along with her look. The nurse came over with the tray, and little Sue saw the disinfectant liquid and the disinfectant cotton on the tray. The doctor's eyes glanced at each side. Little Sue spread her legs obediently and stepped on the footstool. Another nurse brought another tray. The doctor reached out and took out a metal clip which was large and shiny, with an odd shape. Little Sue's body tightened instantly. The doctor patted the inside of her thighs, and little Sue relaxed again. She felt the coldness of the stainless steel and felt the aloof temperament of stainless steel. Little Sue turned her head and bit her lower lip. That cold and hard feeling crawled into the depths of her body, drew in a certain place deep in her body, a half circle to the right and then a half circle to the left. Little Sue suddenly opened her mouth and said nothing. The sharp pain radiated cold light inside her body. Little Sue didn't know if she had fainted. This was the only thing she couldn't be sure of. The nurse brought her something with heat radiating from the cup. Little Sue didn't know what medicine it was, but she drank it all after a big inhale. After drinking, she realized that it was brown sugar water. Little Sue wiped it out for herself, took out the fake Fun brand jeans from her purse, and slowly put it on. Little Sue took 2 steps but didn't find her weight. The whole body floated up with her self-confidence. Little Sue walked back to the tunnel alone. She wanted to hold on to the wall. Oncoming a girl, like a high school student, Little Sue had a face-to-face with the high school girl. The high school girl's eyes looked like a caught little hair. Little Sue decided to be a role model. Combing her hair, straightening her chest, she made it look like nothing has happened. She seemed to overreact. Her face was full of tasting the beautifulness. Little Sue stepped forward and tried to walk more calmly, but the ground refused to cooperate, and the whole city was sinking. There was an extra distance between the road and the feet, and an extra layer of the void. She found a heavy rain while turning at the corner. There were all thick raindrops outside the window. Xiamo was standing under the eaves, facing the eaves of rain in a daze. Little Sue walked to his side, but Xiamo was not even back to his sense. Little Sue didn't stop and went into the rain with anger. Xiamo's eyes had followed Little Sue for 4 or 5 steps before concentrating. Xiamo hurriedly took off his shirt and rushed into the rain, using it as an umbrella over Little Sue's head. Little Sue's grievance and anger turned into fury surging silently in her chest. Tears rushed up, floated with stuck in her eye sockets. She refused to stop, weakly floating towards the gate. Xiamo, drenched in the rain with his bare back, he trotted all the way and whispered, "Little Sue, Little Sue!" Little Sue couldn't move, standing under his shirt and gasping. The naked back of Xiamo was moved vaguely by her tears. "Dog! Dog!" Little Sue suddenly yelled, and she slapped the skin of Xiamo with all her strength, and there was a crisp slap in the rain. "Who made you like this?" she said loudly. Xiamo's chest was stuck to sore and broken bit by bit. He immediately hugged Little Sue and pressed her tightly to his chest. Little Sue's legs softened together, tears gushing out. She grabbed Xiamo's arm and said loudly, "Who made you like this?" Xiamo opened the door, and the room was flooded with water. The north window was not closed. The books stacked in the corner were all drowned by the rain, and their bodies were crumbled and swollen. The terribleness was that canvas, soaked, like little Sue just finished the abortion, showing extreme fatigue softly. Xiamo put little Sue in bed. Little Sue was laying in bed, widening her eyes and looking around. Her eyes were only 0 degrees Celsius, and there was a burst of icy light wherever she saw. Xiamo stood in front of the canvas, a fit of extremely unspecific anger waving in his chest. Xiamo endured it for a long time, but couldn't find an excuse to vent. He summed up the anger with a long sigh. Xiamo plugged in the electric teacup, soaked little Sue's dirty clothes in a green plastic bucket, and then picked up the mop to suck the water from the floor. Xiamo's busy motion made the room scattered again. Every necessity in life seemed unnecessary, and his hands, feet, and these necessities of life quickly showed contradictions. Either they blocked Xiamo, or Xiamo overturned them. Little Sue said weakly, "Don't do it. You can paint." Xiamo stood still, just staring at the canvas in a daze. Xiamo sighed helplessly, and Little Sue said softly, "Why do you always sigh? How am I sorry to you?" Xiamo paused for a few seconds and finally said, "I'll buy you some tonic." Little Sue said, "Forget it. How much money do we have left?" "I can just rest for days." Xiamo lit a cigarette and suddenly smiled with a crooked mouth. "We're in the primary stage of socialism," said Xiamo. "We insisted on socialism." Xiamo went out early the next morning. Little Sue was laying in bed. All the joints on her body were a little bit cold. The sunlight behind the curtain was very strong, but Little Sue felt that her body was far away from the summer, and its fall has begun early. Little Sue looked at the curtain. This curtain was of great significance to Little Sue. She bought it on June 28th, 2 days before graduation. There was a wonderful sun that day, and Little Sue came to the 3rd floor of Hualien Commercial Building alone, took a fancy to this cloth. This cloth is covered with large pieces of coconut leaves, full of views of the tropical coast of the Pacific Ocean. Unrestrained, warm, free, and open. July the 1st was the day she graduated from university, and she was about to return to her hometown, Richang, thousands of miles away. Only 7 empty beds were left in the bedroom. Little Sue stayed in her bedroom for the last time. The heat swelled this anxious moment. There was a kind of sorrow, a kind of melancholy, and a kind of tension. To sum up, between loss and sweetness, there was a kind of eagerness, and that quietly breathes and spreads. She took out the cloth and made a curtain with the unrestrained scenery of the tropics of the Pacific Ocean. A curtain is the beginning of absolute private life, the silent transition of life from general socialization to a hidden personality, and it is the beginning of all young girls becoming women. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Xiamo knocked. Little Sue walked to the door barefoot and opened a gap. The curtain enveloped Xiamo. Xiamo's eyes were in the magnificent space of the tropics of the Pacific Ocean. Xiamo closed the door behind and pulled the latch behind him. "Abandon the distribution, okay?" Little Sue said softly. "Let's stay in this city, all right?" Xiamo only saw the blue sea rolling over the long and snow-white waves. He started surfing, his body bowed between the dome-shaped waves, sliding towards weightlessness in balance. Xiamo nodded. He nodded hastily, recklessly and heroically. The recklessness and straightforwardness of young men were full of masculine charm and full of new concept hero. He hugged her tightly, impulsively. Their impulses exaggerated and stimulated each other, and Xiaomo felt his strength and courage in the arc of little Su's abdomen. They got together. 22 plus 22 are still 22 years old. They stayed in this city only for this reason. The free method of living only comes from a simple impulse, which comes from the big thoughts of the body. A Juan pushed the door, came in at noon. Little Su was surprised at A Juan's coming at this time. To little Su, A Juan's impression did not seem to be eventful. A Juan carried a small casserole, followed by little Belle. A Juan's feet were severely swollen. She was wearing Master Geng's plastic slippers, and the little of her heels were outside. Her belly was pointing and convex, and the off-shoulder skirt was fully stretched, leaving a large hollow between her breasts and abdomen. Little Su propped up her upper body, and A Juan immediately pressed her as soon as putting down the casserole. A Juan said, "I made a bowl of chicken soup for you." Little Su pretended to smile and said, "Why did you boil chicken soup? I got drenched yesterday, but I just caught a cold." A Juan touched the little Belle's head, took the conversation, and said, "Even without cold, drinking it will always not harm."